his father was an aristocrat, aristocrat, very high level, yes, how you doing, Nathan? And how's the life at home,
A little bit like Ismail, right?
Yeah. Like Ismail, yeah.
Very funny.
Yeah.
When you look at the life of so many of these celebrities, every day all these guys who have made it, who already had a very nice life before they became famous actors, then you find out the guy overdosed, sniffing cocaine in his toilet.
Yeah.
Even those people that have all the money, they're not happy.
You want to attain this rich life and it's not a bad thing in itself to become rich. Like you can be rich and a Muslim, right?
Yeah.
No issues with that.
So.
And you can be strong. You can beat up, you can have the power to beat up 6 guys. Nothing wrong with that, but it's about abusing.
There's no real culture. There's no real purpose. There's no real substance. Take away those things you do to keep yourself happier as hobbies. What is there in your life?
It's just distraction.
You're just doing what everyone else is doing because you think that's what you have to do
to fit in or
to live the life
exactly,
which you seem is the right life to live. So you could be from that, you're trying to make money by doing illegal things. That's what everyone else does. You think that's your way to life.
Throughout time and throughout the ages, we've seen many events, heard many stories that have inspired us and motivated us to become the best versions of ourselves. So it's our hope that what you hear today may inspire and motivate you to become a better version of yourself today. Today on the show, we have Simon and we have Ismail. We'll all be sharing different variations of our story, and hopefully they will inspire and encourage you to take steps and journeys in your own life, inshallah ta'ala. So welcome.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam rahmatullah.
It's good to actually be on this first ever episode, inshallah, of our regular podcast.
Inshallah. Yeah.
And I think that the name itself shows what we're trying to
achieve. Inshallah ta'ala. You know what's funny you say that, because I was thinking, and when we came up with this kind of concept and this idea, and as we're speaking now, that the Quran itself is full of stories. Okay. And one of the greatest stories Allah mentions is the story of Yusuf. And this story inspires us to make differences and changes in our life. So it's kind of a common theme in Islam that we know the history of the past in order to benefit our future, right?
100%.
So who's gonna kick it off?
Why don't you kick it off?
Huh? Come on, man.
Let Simon go first, right? Yeah, I think he's got all of the products here that will help him in his story and his journey.
Yeah, I was
new
thinking
flavor, right?
What was better inspiration than a proper, journey into the taste of where you come from, right?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so let's start from the top, right? I don't know how much we should share, but like backgrounds, right? So I'm Simon from Sweden originally, and became Muslim like 7 years ago. Now in next year, it's going to be 7 years, alhamdulillah. So it's definitely been a journey, right? From before I became a Muslim to started research about Islam, and then found Islam. How Allah guided me, and then how we ended up here, right, in this studio in the desert.
Yeah, if you think about it, I mean, like I said, 3 different people. Okay, we're both from the UK, but from different backgrounds and different areas and locations. And one of the things that you could say is inspiring is how Islam can bring all different people from different ages, races, nationalities
100%.
together.
Yeah.
And that's how we all know each other.
Yeah.
So obviously for myself, I'm Ismail and from the UK. Became Muslim when I was 14. So we're talking about 32 years ago now.
Mashallah, tabarakallah.
So I'm
OG.
yeah, OG, old something or whatever. But that's been I've been Muslim now for about 32 years. So I guess that means we come over to you now.
Yeah, so my birth name's Nathan. I go by the name of Shahid. I became Muslim when I was 19 years old, roughly, after a very rocky life, I must say. And we're all sitting here today. And what brings us together is Islam.
Yeah.
We're all in this room because of the one thing that we share, inshallah ta'ala. So hopefully you can share that with the world.
And it's genuine. That's what I like, that's what I noticed. One of those things that drew me into Islam. Like you said, I think many people, they come into this religion from backgrounds that are quite messy. Not everyone, obviously, but I think when you don't have this sense of purpose, you don't have this sense of direction, it just feels like you're on a boat in the middle of nowhere in the ocean, just no direction at all. And then suddenly you see this religion where it provides you with everything, like this big platter of, okay, here's your purpose. This is what you got to do. Stay away from this. And you're going to live a good life. And I think that's something, especially for me, like you guys come from UK, right? I come from Sweden. It's like we're neighbors basically. And surely like many people, when you see coming from the West, and it's more like, yeah, live your life, just be happy, just do your thing. And you kind of fail to like finding that happiness. So you end up looking elsewhere.
It's interesting as well, because as we know, Islam is a way of life.
Yeah.
It's not simply religion. So it's not something where you go to the mosque, you pray 5 times a day, and then you can do whatever you want, or then you just kind of do anything how you feel. We have
exactly.
Every aspect of life, there is guidance there, and even something that is something which is natural, like having marital relations, for example. That's something everyone likes. And now people may think religiously you should frown upon that because it's desires.
Yeah.
But we know that the Prophet Muhammad, he mentioned one time that, of course, he mentioned that when you provide for your family, your children, you're rewarded. And he mentioned as well that when you have relations with your wife or vice versa, that you're rewarded. And his companions, they said, we're rewarded for our desires. And he said, if you were to put these desires or use these desires in a way that is outside of marriage, would it not be sinful? They said, yes. He said, then if you're doing it in the right way, it's rewarded. So we know in Islam that smiling in the face of your brother is an act of charity, is rewarded. Just going about your daily job, if you're having the intention to do it to please Allah, to be a good person, to provide, to help the community, you get rewarded for it. So pretty much everything you can do in your life, if you have the right intention, you're doing something good, is rewarded. Where so it's just a complete way of life.
Yeah, and that's, for me, that was kind of like, this journey has been like one where that element of it has really stood out more than the rest. Because growing up in the lifestyle I had, it's like, do whatever you want whenever you want. And yes, I had boundaries that were set by my parents, my grandparents. But what I mean is that even in those boundaries, it was kind of like, you make it up yourself. Do you know what I'm trying to say? You can have a girlfriend, whatever, go out here. When I went out, my parents didn't really ask me who I'm socializing with, what are we doing when we're socializing. Even though I mentioned there was boundaries, there were morals. But the reality is that there wasn't every moment of my life I had an accountability.
No.
And that's why I say when we all came from whatever we came from rocky starts, because the reality is without Islam and without that kind of discipline, it is a rocky start to life. There's no real way of living life correctly, because we believe in Islam. Allah is the one who chose Islam for us and has given us the way to live life.
Yeah, and there's no compromises. And like, you cannot compromise this. Like, either is, like you said, it's either good or bad. Like, and I think the simplicity of opposites, you have the good and bad, it makes things so much easier. No more guesswork. Like, then obviously there are a bunch of things like where you would say like, okay, like you said, in marriage, it's not like, okay, you got to do it like this, or you got to, be this kind of person. Like, you can still be your own person, right? And still live this life according to the religion, but you have your own personality, your own culture. Like, see, we're coming from different cultures, right? It's not like we're erasing our past. We're just correcting what was not really working, or not really, aligned. Yeah. Right?
We get some sense of direction. Yeah. So I think it's about time that we get into that point where most people are thinking, okay, you're in Islam now, your brother's sitting in a room on a podcast, but what's your history saying? Because most people who take this journey, who will want to take this journey, will always start somewhere. And where does it all start for us? I think where it started for me is it's a long story, but if I go into like kind of a brief version, it started from when I was a child. I think when I was young.
I think like give how it was before. What was like paint that picture.
Yeah. it's hard because
Yeah.
you want to paint the picture and kind of not expose yourself at the same time. But one of the things is that I was thinking last night about this podcast, I was thinking sometimes you have to lay the truth out in order for the real story to be put across, you know? And the truth is, growing up, how I grew up, I just wanted to be rich. That was it. I just wanted to be growing up in poverty in a family that didn't have much, and
Right.
we are from a Caribbean family living in the West, and you know there's a lot of racism. You just want to become something important.
But I mean, there is that whole kind of slogan: "It's get rich or die trying."
Exactly right.
All that,
Exactly.
you know, they have those
All
ones that
that
come
hypes,
out with
yeah,
this
yeah.
all dunya based.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
like
all, yeah.
you get rich whatever way you can, even if it kills you. So it could
Exactly.
be like drugs, violence, gangs,
Exactly,
whatever it may
exactly,
be.
exactly.
Or that YOLO scenario, you know, like
you only live once. Yeah, yeah.
Which in reality, you only live once in this life.
Yeah.
They mean it in another way,
Yeah.
where you're only going to live once and that's, it.
Yeah.
We know in Islam that you don't only live once. You live only once on this earth. But whatever you do on this earth
is what
you're gonna, you're gonna reap what you sow on this earth.
exactly that.
So you have a lot of these kind of slogans that are being pushed out to the people.
And I think that was the slogan that I grew up on, to be honest. You know, it was like, I wasn't thinking about the hereafter. I wasn't thinking about what's going to happen in the hereafter. Yeah, we came from a Christian family, but it wasn't like at the forefront of our mind, like, okay, what I do today is going to affect me for the future. Your kind of belief is you're all going to go to heaven, paradise. You know, you die, you go to paradise. That's how it is. So yeah, for me, it was like kind of get rich in any way possible, because that's the solution to my problem. Problem is living in an environment where money is an issue. Acceptance is an issue, you know, being accepted in my environment, in my community. I was one of the only colored people in my school, you know, primary school. It was like, there's a lot of racial abuse. So it was like, if I attain power, money and fame, khalas, I'm sorted.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my ambition, you know, and the only way I thought I could do that is I was writing poetry when I remember in maybe year 5 or year 6, I was writing poetry. And I remember I used to have this basketball top, right? It was the Raptors from, I think, Canada. So I said, yeah, I'm called the Velociraptor or something like that. My rap name, yeah, I'm the Raptor, yeah. So I was like, yeah, I've got this t-shirt on, I'm gonna rap and whatever else. So I was writing poetry, and I thought, okay, maybe now I'm gonna become a rapper. And that's what's gonna be my way of making my mark in this world. So I pushed towards that. And it's quite strange because at the same time I had this kind of shy, timid nature. You know, I was bullied a lot at school. I never fought back. And so I was like, if I become famous, they'll accept me. I don't need to fight anymore.
Was it like, I want to ask is like, did you feel like, okay, that you didn't have the confidence, and you felt like, if I become this person with fame and money and, you know, then I have the, you know, the rights, or I'm confident. I'm going to be that guy.
100%.
Yeah.
Because that's the reality. The reality is like, you know, when I mentioned shy and timid, I got bullied, and it's because there was confidence issues. And it's kind of, you know, if I become famous, they will have to accept me.
Right.
You know what I'm trying to say? I don't have to kind of do much. But long story short, you know, what happened was it tipped the other side, because when I was getting bullied, you know, I was bullied severely. It got to a point where it spilled into my house. It spilled into my life at home. And I consulted my grandfather. And, you know, I was studying martial arts, and he said, don't let anyone hurt you again. Like, don't let anyone harm you. And I was like that kind of person was like, I don't want to harm other people, but they're harming me. So, okay, let me do what my granddad said and not let anyone harm me again. And I actually, in fact, end up hurting them more than I should have, really, to be honest. And I got in a lot of trouble. But at that moment, and the reason why I mentioned that, because at that moment, it defined the next few years of my life. I realized that at that point in life, the power I had was my strength, my ability to fight. So when I took out all these boys that were like basically surrounding me, I realized that one person, me, was able to take out 6 boys.
Mashallah.
So there's like, I kind of was like, okay, that's my power.
We gotta be careful, Ismail.
Well, he's jiu-jitsu, and he's, you know.
Oh yeah, I gotta be careful.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, because Islam
you can't bench press him, bro.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know, but the thing is, the beauty of now Islam, shows us that that's not the life to live. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So, but at that moment in time, it was like, this is my power. No one's going to bully me anymore because now I am, you know, they call them what they call them in UK, like I'm a hard nut, right? So I'm a hard nut. And it's all came from, you know, some of the experiences I was going through in life, you know. I was venting out basically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the start of all the journey, but I won't bore anyone with any more of that. Maybe we can hear something from you guys.
No, but it's interesting. And I just want to say, like, so people don't misunderstand it. Like, you want to attain this rich life to, you know, and it's not a bad thing in itself to become rich. Like, you can be rich and a Muslim, right?
Yeah.
No issues with that.
So.
And you can be strong. You can beat up, you can have the power to beat up 6 guys.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, but it's about abusing.
That's exactly what it is.
Abusing your way to get there.
Exactly.
Right? And like I said, compromising your own moral, compromising, you know, hurting people, all that's what's bad.
Yeah.
But the destination is, like, as Muslims, you should be independent, take care of yourself, your family, be rich, like, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, if you're able to beat up 6 guys, that's good. If they're gonna attack you, you can defend yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's not like abusing that power.
And that's the thing, bro. What it was for myself was abusing that power.
Yeah.
It was a life of abusing my power and the abilities that I had and was given. Because as you mentioned, right, you know, I have a family, and if my family are ever attacked, I can stand my ground enough to maybe protect them. And this is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But at that point in my life, it was like I can show people that I am worth listening to. Because why? If you don't listen to me, I'm the boss man. Do you know what I'm trying to say? This is disgusting. You know,
Exactly.
but it's where the journey started, and it's very important to mention because
it's kind of, sorry to interrupt, but it's kind of like the bullied may become the bullier, right?
exactly that, and that's exactly what it was. It was like the bullied became the bully, but with a bit of a twist, because one of the things is that I didn't after that moment ever lift my hand on anyone else except for when I moved to the secondary school. Again, there the people tried to bully me, and what's interesting is that at that moment I developed, you know, a little bit more advanced understanding of martial arts. My rapping skills were better, you know. So I was performing in a, you know, under 16s nightclub, you know, rapping and so on and so forth. So I had a name kind of like for that kind of stuff, you know. So I didn't really need to be on the violent side of things anymore, to be honest. But it was a incident where a friend of mine, wrestling was the thing. I don't know if you remember wrestling, but wrestling was like the thing, and you like
Wrestling,
yeah.
Back when it was called WWF.
WWF, yeah, WWF.
Oh, yeah, that
like
one,
everyone
yeah.
used to go on the playground and we used to like wrestle the next one's head. And one day like we did like a you know, a dog pile. Everyone's on top of each other, and I was on the bottom, but I felt someone was hitting me, and I was like, for a while I was like, what's going on? And I didn't know if maybe people were trying to get up. And there was this young boy. He was he was hitting me, and he was like, he's like, I hate you. I was like, wow, like, you know, he's in my friend circle. And I remember being like, saying to him like, well, why are you doing this for? And it turned out, to be honest with you, I understand why he was like this. I found out later on in life, but it was to do with racism.
Wow.
And so he was like, you know, you come and hang around with us. We're the cool kids. Why do you get to be with us? And I remember saying like, I don't want to fight you. And he was like, no, you're gonna fight me. So we ended up, you know, having a little tussle, and I overpowered him. But I remember crying my eyes out because it's just, for me, it's still alien. I don't want to have to be, I just want to be a rapper. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's a very important part of my journey because it kind of gives the holistic understanding of where I was in life.
Yeah.
I was torn between different worlds. You understand me? I want to be rich. I want to be famous. I don't want to do everything and anything to get there. But at the same time, I'm finding out that I've got some sort of you know, status or ability. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So what I did is actually, instead of becoming the bully, I defended bullies.
You defended bullies?
I defended bullies. So when anyone else was being bullied, I put them in my gang. You know?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Do you understand what I'm trying to
Defending
say?
the people who were being bullied.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were defending bullies.
No,
like,
defending them. So what happened was, is that for me, this is a way to get more fame and status. Do you understand me? Because now if I take the bullies into my camp, they will be with me and they'll promote my music and they'll come to my things. You understand?
Became like Robin Hood.
Yeah,
Thing,
no,
you know.
not really. It wasn't as righteous. I was very selfish reasons. You know what I'm trying to say? Because the reality is, in the life in UK, in the streets and you know, different gangs and so on and so forth. I'm not saying I was in a gang, but it's a loyalty game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who you can get to be loyal to, and I found that if I defended people, they would be loyal to me, which meant that when I was in trouble, they would defend me. If I needed to promote myself or music or get to somewhere, they'll promote me. So this was kind of where I realized at that point in life, this is where I could kind of become famous and successful, where I can gain my power. And, you know, a lot of different things happened, but that was one element of my story that I've not said or told until now. Because it's, you know, it's something that's very sensitive to bring up. It's actually quite embarrassing. But the reason why I brought this up is because when I came into Islam, something very, very powerful happened. You know, whereas now I need to go make up for my past. And the past is affecting me today. When I go somewhere, when I'm out, when I meet people, maybe I've done something where I need to now ask forgiveness. So my kind of message is that to those young people, fix your life early on, because it affects you as an adult. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah, I can sit here, I can talk about it now, and maybe I'm gonna have more empathy for people who are in the same situation, but I'm still suffering from some of those problems I had in the past. Do you understand me? So that was kind of the environment that I was in. That was kind of the thing that I was growing up in. I was torn between the worlds of good and bad, because my family, they wanted me to be good, to be honest. Let's be honest. They want a wholesome, you know, son or a wholesome grandchild. But the reality is I rebelled against it all because I didn't see any success in being that person. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And that's kind of a bit about my background up to secondary school.
And the thing is, like, we all do mistakes, bro. Right?
I'm just trying to think, like, if our stories are going to be as interesting as that.
As what?
No.
Huh?
I say now we have to compete with him.
Compete, yeah?
It's really difficult to compete with that interesting
Nah,
story.
you know, the thing is, you know, it's not competition, but you know what it is? One of the things that my father said to me recently, right? And I respect him and I love him for it, is he said to me, you know, one of the things about your story that you've never ever shared with the world, you've never shared the reality of what you are actually going through. You never actually come to terms with it. Now, I've come to terms with it, but I've never actually spoken about it. I speak about the effects of it to other people, to help other people, right? But I never talked about the reality of what kind of difficulty I was in. Because when I was growing up, I had 3 different types of environments around me. I had the environment of the playground. I had the environment of my family, a Caribbean family. They want you to be good. They send you to church, so on and so forth. So there was a type of religiousness. And then I had the environment of my auntie. Her name's Julia. She's married to his name's Alex. Sorry, excuse me, guys. His name's Alex, right? Start again.
You have a third?
Yeah. So as I was mentioning, sorry about the interruption, is that my auntie Julia, she was like, they call her a godmother, right? Someone who's supposed to look after me.
Yeah.
So her husband, his father was an aristocrat, very high level, so how you doing, Nathan? And how's the life at home,
A little bit like Ismail, right?
Yeah. Ismail, yeah.
Very funny.
Yeah. But it's that environment. I honestly, I say these things really had heavily affected on me, because on the weekend I'll go to the theater and I'll watch, Romeo and Juliet, and I'll be with people like, start with the fork on the left, Nathan, and that sort of stuff, But at the same time, I'll be out on the streets, and then at the same time I'll be at home, and I'll be 3 different
contrast.
people. Yeah, it was like a complete, struggle of who do I be. And this is only when I found, or when I was brought, should I say, to Islam, I realized who I can actually be. Myself, as you mentioned, without any, getting rid of my personality, but aligning my life in the right way. And this is what's really important. And I hope that when I share this with other people, they see that whatever backgrounds they've come from, it's possible that they can come out of it. Because one of the things my friends used to say to me is that, how are you going to get out of this life?
Yeah.
You're in it. How are you going to get out? And alhamdulillah, Allah pulled me out of it by force, but You know, it's
Because
it's
many people,
possible.
they don't get out. Like
Exactly, yeah.
we got a lot, and there's so many problems with this in Sweden right now. Like we got these young people getting into this, like because it's so cool, like you said, and you know, the way you're getting out is like
Yeah.
in a coffin.
Yeah. And that's what I used to say to myself. In fact, I'll say something before that. The most sadness I've ever felt in my life was being in that life. What people didn't understand or didn't know, where I was out in the nightclubs rapping and whatever else, and people are singing my lyrics. At the same time, I go home and cry. And this is like stuff that nobody knew. I'll go home and cry on my auntie's lap, and she'd be like rubbing my head like I was a baby, bro.
Yeah.
But I don't want to tell my boys that, because if I tell my boys that, it's going to be like, yo, you're not about
weak,
it. Do you understand? You're weak. So I was torn in every way, shape and form, because, you know, it's like, I don't want this, I don't want that. I didn't have any direction and sense in my life. And as you mentioned, I would say to myself, or say to the people around me, I'm not going to make it to 21.
The funny thing is you mentioned that now, because you may have some people watching thinking like, because a lot of people have this mentality that if you become Muslim and you came from some kind of troubles, that's why. If he was a guy who didn't come from lots of troubles, he would never become a Muslim.
There you are, yeah.
But when you look at the life of so many of these celebrities, every day all these guys who have made it, the private jets, the super famous rappers, or they could be anything. They could be rappers, could be whatever they may be, actors.
Right.
How many times we find out sooner or later, like every few years, we find out that even some of the ones who are considered to be like middle upper class, white Americans or whatever it may be, actors who already had a very nice life before they became famous actors, then you find out the guy overdosed sniffing cocaine in his toilet.
Yeah.
Or this, you know, so the reality is, even those people who have all the money, they're not happy. So people might say like, oh yeah, he just got a bit of fame. That, you know, if he'd have really made it and was a household name, it would be different. No, because those guys who have all the money, why do we always hear that? Just recently, a famous actor for one of those famous American sitcoms, and we don't say this to make fun of him anyway, of course not. It's actually sad.
Yeah,
it's very sad.
He's found dead in his bathtub from having a cocktail of antidepressants and other things. Why? Because he was depressed. It's a sad thing. But this just shows you, and I'm no psychologist, so we're not talking about that. We're not making fun of people who go through depression. But the fact that what we're trying to point out is here, you can have fame and money, but there's still something missing.
Yeah, that's 100%.
You know? And that's why so many of those people overdose, whether intentionally, accidentally, because they're already taking so many cocktails of medicines to try and make them feel happy that they took one tablet too many and they died while they're having a bath. But this is the reality. So this, you know, it's not about this person came from a troubled background. You know, if, you know, okay, there are people who didn't come from a troubled background and they have everything that they need, but they still are missing something. And we know as Muslims, because it says in the Quran, Almighty God, Allah says that indeed in the remembrance of Allah do hearts truly find, you know, what's the word?
Ease or like
at ease, happiness,
rest, is what
serenity, peace.
And that's the thing, right? Like I think people it's a conflicting idea between happiness. It's like, okay, I'm gonna sit and laugh all the time and just be happy. It's not about that.
It's not at all.
It's about ups and downs. Life is ups and downs. But in that, like you said, you are stable. Like
and it's a generally it's a continuing. You may even have troubles, but there's still, you have this kind of peace at heart in the background. Of course, you're going to have troubles. You're going to be tested. Even the Quran says, you say that you think you'll say that I believe
and not be tested,
and you will not be tested.
There you are.
We tested the prophets before you, who are the best of people. But you know, the difference is other things that make you happy, they're very temporary. So you may go on a nice luxury holiday somewhere or get a nice new car. After a while, it becomes normal. And that, you know, it no longer gives you that happiness.
That happiness at buzz.
So the happiness, which I'm sure we can all attest to, when you're a Muslim, if you're trying your best to follow Islam, is you will always feel there is an ultimate kind of happiness. Yeah, you'll go through troubles. You might everyone gets a bit upset, depressed sometimes, but it never really lasts for too long because there's always that time you're going to go and pray. And we always say, I'm sure you guys can attest to this, that feeling of when you're in prostration. I remember when I became a Muslim, and obviously we're going to go into the details of each one of our stories, but when I became a Muslim, one of the first things that I experienced, even before becoming a Muslim, is I went to the mosque with some of my school friends and I prayed. And when I was in that position of prostration, couldn't explain any other feeling like it, you know.
Your head on the floor.
There's nothing there. There's no pictures. There's no idols. There's nothing. You're just complete submission, and you know, and that was part of my journey of becoming a Muslim.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're gonna, you know, as we go along, we're gonna talk about how we became Muslims.
You know, that's exactly what you said. The nail on the head is that there's a sense of emptiness, and that's what's really the most important part of my journey, was the sense of emptiness. Is that, you know, everyone has a different level of what they seem or deem as success. Okay, millionaire could be, yeah, I've made it now. For me, as a 16-year-old boy, I won a MC competition against most of the most famous MCs in the environment that I was in. I was given residency to be the local MC in every, you know, I was VIP in everywhere I went. You know, for me, that was like enough. I finally got acceptance, because it wasn't about really the money. The money was good, right? Getting money is good. And I'm not saying we did good things to get money, but it was about the acceptance. But as you mentioned, there was something always missing, because, you know, okay, one nightclub, okay, good. Yeah, yeah. But then you go home, you're sad. Do you understand me? Okay, I've got these nice trainers. I've got these nice X1Z. Okay, I've got this person next to me. But it's emptiness. It's complete and utter emptiness. It doesn't fulfill you for long periods of time. And the laughing is kind of insincere. It's like, yeah, you're laughing, but the guy's laughing with you. If he had an opportunity, he would take what you have and run like the wind.
And you know it.
And you know it. Yeah, exactly. And there's no loyalty there. So I think for me, that kind of, to bring it up to the point where I accepted Islam, I'd done so much bad stuff and was battling with all these different things around me, that I kind of got to the point where it's going to be either I'm one drink too many or whatever else. And I kind of, my family were very alarmed and very disturbed by my mental health situation. And I know I was referred to the doctors, and the doctors would say, like, you know, take these pills. But I never took them, because I was like, you know, it's not something that a medicine can fix. Yeah, I knew that, but I didn't know how the solution would come, right? But I knew it was something that not a medicine will fix, not speaking to anyone would fix. It's something more than that. Because, you know, growing up in an environment I grew up in, even though I haven't mentioned it, there was a religious element to it. There was the school I went to was a religious school. My family, my grandfather and others and that were, you know, were quote unquote religious. So I knew there was something more than what a medicine can do for me. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So
it's not something human made that can fix this problem.
Exactly. Because if you look at it, at the point there, I was like performing with Nicky Black Market. I don't know if you remember Nicky Black Market from Jahiliya. You know? He's one of the like top drum and bass DJs in the world, right? And, you know, for me, that was a big achievement. You know, I'd been in that bad environment. I was being mixed up with certain things. You know, as you said, it could be one drink too many, one cocktail too many, and that could be the end. That's it, you know? Yeah. So I was kind of at that point, to be honest. I was at that point where I'd done enough wrongdoing, and I don't think there was a limit to my wrongdoing. And, you know, and I apologize to everyone who I've ever harmed and wronged beforehand. And I hope that they can forgive me. And that's the kind of scary thing for me, is that, you know, even though time changes, you change, but some things you've done beforehand never change, right? But at that moment, I was saying to myself, kind of, there is more to this than what meets the eye, right? There's more to this than just the doctor saying, take this pill, it's fixed for you, you know? And I remember, like, among all of this mess, all of these things that were going on, all of the different things that were going on, I remember some key events was the words from my grandfather. You know, he was talking about, he's always encouraged me to learn, focus, learn more. And he had an interesting conversation with me about, you know, Jesus and who Jesus is and who he believed Jesus was, which is, you know, he said he was a prophet, a messenger. And I was confused, you know.
And he was a Christian, no?
Yeah, he was a Christian. Yeah, he was, yeah.
But he said, like, Jesus was a prophet.
Yeah, he said he believes Jesus was a messenger and things like that. So there was other influences maybe that were rare at the time, but it's significant things for me in my story, because if I go into it, there's loads to tell. We're talking about years of my life. Yeah. If I break it down to significant events, it was the sadness, it was the confusion, it was being compelled between all these different lifestyles, these words from my grandfather, all these different things in my environment. And I just one day came to my house, which was like, it used to be the spot for everybody, and it was empty. which was very, very random. It was never empty. And I remember saying, God, is this all my life is? Is this all it is? Is there something else?
Yeah.
And I sat down at the table and I just sat in my hands, you know. And a friend of mine, which I knew from primary school, you know, I'm still in contact with him now. He came to my house and he gave salam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, to a friend outside our house.
Yeah, and that's the Muslim greeting, right?
Yeah, as a
Peace be
Muslim
upon
greeting.
you.
Yeah, peace be upon him. He hugged him, and I was like, "What is this?" You know, and I don't know why. Maybe I've seen it before. Maybe I have known about it before. Maybe there's other elements to my story that I subconsciously didn't understand.
Right.
But this was a defining moment for me because when I saw it, I was like, "What is this, bro? What is that?" And then I grilled him like, "You're supposed to be at my house in the day. We're doing it. We've got things to do. We've got moves to make. We've got things to do." And he's like, "Yeah, I can't come, bro. Like, you know, Ramadan." And I'm like, "Whoa, Ramadan? What are you talking about, Ramadan? You know?" The only thing I really knew was that on Eid we go out and we go out. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So I always thought that Eid was the event where we just go out and.
Yeah.
So anyway, flash forward, we're talking, discussing, and that night I asked him again, what was that thing you said? And he said, Assalamu alaikum, and you know, we're brothers in Islam and this and that and the other. And long story short, there was like 6 hours of discussion, you know, and me being in the situation I was in, it wasn't because I was from a troubled background, I need to find something. It was because something was actually missing.
Yeah.
It wasn't the fact that I need to find something, and if I found Judaism or this one, next one said, no, it wasn't that. And that's what people need to understand, because the truth is the truth. And I was looking for the truth. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Sorry to cut you off because I know you're about to this, but the point you touched upon, it's not about that. You can come from a good background, but it's all material. So you could be having a comfortable life and you do the things that you're supposed to do in a middle class / upper class background. So you should learn the piano.
Yeah.
Or the flute.
Nah.
Go to church on Sundays, if that, or certain occasions just because that's what everyone else does in a middle class environment.
Exactly.
I don't know. If you're a girl, you should learn ballet.
Yeah.
If you're a guy, you should play football and cricket, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So it's all just fitting in with what is expected from you.
Exactly.
But there's no substance to it.
Exactly.
You know,
there's no purpose.
There's no purpose behind it. You're just saying like, okay, I'm from this kind of background, then I have to go to the theatre and the opera.
Exactly.
You're from another background, I have to be with the boys. You know, whatever you look at, it doesn't matter what so-called quote unquote class or background you're from. You're just doing what everyone else is doing because you think that's what you have to do to fit in or to live the life which you seem is the right life to live. So you could be from that, you're trying to make money by doing illegal things. That's what everyone else does. You think that's your way to life.
Exactly.
So but it all lacks. There's no real culture. There's no real purpose. There's no real substance. Take away those things you do to keep yourself happy or as hobbies. What is there in your life?
It's just distraction at the end of the day,
family,
right?
you've got friends, you've got loved ones, but
each
so
one
does
of those
everybody.
things is a distraction, as you mentioned. Because if I go into deeper aspects of my story, I can say I played for London Coney FC. London Coney FC has been a semi-professional football club since the long time. Right. Then I played for St Albans FC. Yeah, you know, these are like semi-professional football teams. I got scouted for Watford due to there was a project they were doing. They're going to they were going to schools or organizations where there were kids that were struggling.
Scouting,
you know,
talents.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I went through that process, you know. So I can talk about all those other distractions, but the reality is all they were
distractions.
They're distractions. But if I try to sieve it all away and say, you know, okay, I played football, I was a league goal scorer, and you know, my school I was the fastest in my district, and I played done javelin. We can go on and on and on. But the reality is, just to condense it, is I was struggling in all these different areas to find where I fit in. And some people may say I fit in because it feels good, but the reality is, if they're being truthful to themselves, the truth is you don't actually feel like that.
And all of these things are just side things.
Exactly.
Having family, having loved ones. Of course, everyone has family and loved ones.
Exactly.
All these other things you're doing, and whether you're doing from this level, that level, these are just side issues of life.
Exactly.
They're not your main
They're not
purpose,
your main goal, focus, not
and
at all.
You know, in the bigger picture, they kind of mean nothing.
Exactly. And that's what I mentioned, is that there comes a time where you have to be truthful. Yeah. Now, from this moment, before this moment, I spent my life lying to everybody about everything.
SubhanAllah.
and I'm like everything, parents, everyone around me. And it came to that moment where I don't know for what reason I decided, or I was gifted, or can you say, or whatever, I was inspired, I have to be truthful. Does that mean from that moment on I was truthful 100%? No. But it was like in that moment I have to be truthful. I'm missing something completely.
Yeah.
And who should I be truthful to? It's God the Almighty. I believe in him. So I said, this is, so that discussion was a byproduct of what I was feeling.
Yeah.
And when I asked the questions, many of the questions I asked, I knew the answers already in my life, because in Christianity we learned this. We learned about Moses, we learned about Abraham, we learned about Adam and Eve, and it makes sense. But the one thing for me that really fixated with me was the simplicity of believing in God. He's not one of three, he's not this, and Jesus. And I always thought to myself, if I believe in Moses and then Jesus comes, and I believe in Abraham and all the prophets beforehand, why do we always have this thing where we stop at one, or we favor one or the other? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
So it's like, I know I believe in Jesus. Now, do I believe in all the aspects of Jesus? Personally, I didn't. So when he was saying that we believe in Jesus, but after Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, and he explained all this, it kind of, at that moment, life made sense. Does that mean after that moment I became this perfect version of myself? No, because we know from even the Quran and Sunnah that over a period of time you develop. You take the step and then you change elements of your life. Right. But at that moment, that was the defining moment for me, that I knew that this Islam is the truth. It's not just a thing that would save me. It's the truth. So I had to embrace it. I had to, to follow it. And from that moment, what a lot of people don't understand about my story is that I acknowledged and accepted that I was a Muslim from that moment. Now, where my journey took me after that was a very dark place, but I always believed I was a Muslim.
The belief was there.
The belief was there, yeah. And then that's when I started to, make the certain changes and transition and stuff like that. And I didn't ever come out and say I'm a Muslim until long deeper into my story.
Long,
it was about 6-7 months maybe after.
Wow.
Of living like this. And
it's
I remember,
like your secret.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a secret. It's because through one of the blessings that Allah gave me, he took me away from my environment and he put me in a place where I was unable to be with anyone. I was just away from everybody. And in that place, nobody really had access to me, so I could live reading the Quran, praying and doing it. No one knew. No one would know. And it was only when I invited my parents to come visit me, when I told them this is what I've chosen for myself. But they didn't take it in like, wow, fantastic, because the reality is they know me to be this criminal, bad-minded person. Right. Maybe I'm going to go to another level now, which is I'm going to use this religion to now feed my already.
They didn't see the change.
Yeah, but then after a while, they seen the changes.
But that's an interesting thing. Like, how would the environment react to you when you take that step? And I think we need to maybe have a separate episode. Like that's a big thing. Yeah. But I think we all gone through that. Yeah. We're erasing the bad stuff from our old self. And
yeah, I think one of the things I'll just end with my story, because it has many dynamics, and I've told it in many different ways because there's many elements to it. But I think this is where I believe that it will inspire others, because I came from very confused past and dark past, but I came through it with the help of Allah. One thing I'll mention is that for me, it wasn't about proving to anyone anymore.
Yeah.
When I accepted Islam, it wasn't about I need to prove to anyone anything anymore. It was about I need to prove to Allah that I'm his slave. Now, I didn't consider myself a slave, but it's like I live my life, and that's why I chose the name Shaheed, because when I was walking back to my room, one guy was explaining to me, now you need to choose a Muslim name. And it's given me, Abdullah and all this stuff. He said, and I was asking about the names, and he said, Shaheed. Shaheed means the one who gave his life for Islam. And I thought this for me. Yeah. Because I gave my life towards the dunya, like I was ready to die for the world, Yeah. So this whole idea of dying for Islam, even though I didn't know the full complete understanding of the word, the name Shaheed, but it means that someone gave his life to Islam, meaning that I'm going to spend the remaining half of my life trying to make up for the rubbish that came before. And it wasn't about proving to anyone. And in fact, at that moment in time, I was being abused by other people, but I didn't, fight back. It was like, I need to be 360.
Yeah.
And that's where the journey took me.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. So that's a bit about my background and what led me here today. And there's much more to be said, but I think that's the element of my story that I want to share with other people, because I've kept it as a private, personal thing. And I think I'm ready to share with the world. That's what my background was. That's what I grew up in. And it doesn't mean because you're like that, you don't have a chance in life. You just have to work harder, and you have to prove, not to anyone, but prove to yourself and Allah that you know you're truthful. And if you're truthful, then Allah will help you the rest of the way.
Yeah, mashallah. Appreciate the honesty, man. I didn't know about this. Did you? No?
And I'd heard some of it because we had a discussion before. I can't remember where, but we did something where we discussed it. But some of the details are new details.
Yeah, mashallah.
And that's that happens a lot. You know, some friends I'm with, and they're like, "You didn't tell me that," but I'm like, "There's a lot to my life. That a lot of people don't know." And I also said this to my father: "You want me to share every aspect of my life? Some of it's not important.
You cannot share.
You can't share all of it. But the reality is, you only share what's enough to help the situation,
to be a sign for,
or to be a sign to other people." And that's what I'm saying. This podcast, the whole idea of it is to share it in stories that might inspire the people. So now it's relevant, so I can talk about it, right? But what's the point of talking about this disgusting lifestyle I lived before? But to be proud of it, I'm not proud of it. I'm actually disgusted by it. So there's no need for me to just talk about, oh yeah, I used to be the top man and this rubbish. It's rubbish, to be honest, because the best of you in the sight of Allah is one who has more knowledge of him, who's more subservient to him, and more who's connected to him. And that's what's important. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Successful are the believers. Not successful are the one who's top G, who's successful. Do you understand me? So this is, what's important. For me, that was kind of the defining moments of my journey. And that's what kind of was a catalyst to where I am today. And there's many things to discuss after that. We'll maybe discuss in another episode. But I think, that's what I want to share with the world, to let you know that, whatever path you're on, whatever journey you're going through, it's never too late to change. As long as you're truthful to yourself, and you're truthful to, first and foremost, truthful to God the Almighty Allah, and you're truthful to yourself. There's nothing to stop you. There's nothing going to get in your way, inshallah ta'ala. And I'm interested to hear how you guys went through your own journeys and what you have to share, inshallah ta'ala. We'll start from the right, Al-Ayman fil Ayman, sah?
Yeah. No, the thing is, my story is very similar to yours. So I'm thinking Ismail can have a go at it. So we have some variation.
Yeah.
Nice.
Vary it up,
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Middle class, white guy from UK.
Yeah.
How that?
It's interesting because I was brought up, there wasn't really many Muslims. And then we moved from where I spent most of my life in a little place called Tattenham Corner, close to Epsom. They have the Epsom Downs, where they have one of the famous yearly horse races and stuff, the Epsom Derby. So we moved after that. My mother and father divorced when I was younger, and my father remarried and my mother remarried. So we moved from that area to another part of Surrey. So it's not like we went, into London or anything. It's still Surrey, but still suburbia. But that area, you could say, was slightly closer to London. That was somewhere like Old Causden, Caterham, kind of. So you're getting closer towards eventually Croydon and Streatham, and if you were to go for 30, 40 minutes. So there were some students who came from Thornton Heath and Croydon. They busted in. And a lot of those were the Muslims that were there. And there was a few. I mean, in my whole school, there's probably 10 Muslims. So it was still back then it was still a very, generally speaking, like white population. But there were black people, there were some Asians and different backgrounds, but they were still like a minority. So there were maybe in the whole school, probably 10, 11 Muslims. In my year, there was 4 or 5. So there was a few different backgrounds, British Pakistani, British Bengali, British Guyana, British Turkish. They were Muslim. And at that time, I don't think they were praying 5 times a day, but they used to pray sometimes the Jummah prayer. And from what I can recollect, quite a long time ago now, but I remember that one time it was lunch break and I'm walking down the corridor and I see some of my non-Muslim friends outside a classroom, which to me was really strange. I was like, oh, what are you guys doing? It's lunchtime. Why are you outside a classroom? They said, we're waiting for Adil and Shahid. There was actually one guy called Shahid. Nadeem, Hadil. I said, what are they doing in their class? They said, they're praying. So we came and looked and like, no, don't, because it's that thing like, what are you looking at? We'll beat you up kind of thing. So they were like, no, don't look, they're going to get angry. So I became really interested. So I remember approaching them and they were like typical, not necessarily practicing. So they took it as a bit of they became very defensive. Like they thought, I'm ready to make a joke or something. So no, I'm interested. What is this? So they didn't have a lot of knowledge. So I remember them writing down for me on a piece of paper, Subhanallah, glory be to Allah. Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah. Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest. La ilaha illallah, there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah. In like English letters, like Subhanallah. And they told, and Astaghfirullah, I seek forgiveness from Allah. And they said to me, you're a non-Muslim, so this one you have to read so many times. And that was pretty much it. They didn't have the background to kind of give me da'wah or explain Islam to me. Right. So I remember going home to my grandfather's house, and he had this big book called the Reader's Digest World Book of Facts.
I remember this book,
Big thick book. It has information about, back then of course, what the population of the world, information about the world. So religions, obviously, world religions came in there. So I remember flicking through them and noticing when I went to Islam, the whole emphasis of Islam, believes in one true God, and only he should be worshipped. There's no need to pray to the Prophet Muhammad, to Jesus, to Abraham, to Moses. Nobody. So something kind of resonated in me, like that makes sense,
So I want to just interject there, bro. Like this is like, I want to ask you, how about your background? How about your history as growing up, like in that environment? Because obviously that plays a part in obviously the journey that you've come to. Like you Reader's Digest, you're reading it. You kind of had knowledge. You kind of had, what kind of upbringing do you have to have that interest?
Because this was before internet, right?
Yeah, because I'm trying to say, because we all have that kind of, what sparks that kind of desire. It comes from somewhere.
I don't know. I mean, because my mother and father divorced, I was brought up with my father in my grandparents' house for a while before my father then went and bought a new house. So you could say for about 5 or 6 years, from like what they would say my formative years, from the age of like maybe probably 6 until about 14, until about 12, I was at my grandparents' house, or maybe around 13. Anyway, 6 or 7 years. So I had a fairly like happy, like it's not one of those things where I came from a divorced, family and broken and every day I'm crying or something. I mean, I had a loving father. My grandparents were very active in my life, so it's like my grandmother became we called her Gran. She recently passed away, but my Gran was like a mother figure to me. So I didn't have that thing where single father or single mother. I would see my mother quite regularly every few months. She lived in a different part of the UK, like in Eastbourne, towards the coast. But so I can't say I had a very sad upbringing, really. Of course, that people say that divorce can affect you, but I can't think of anything where I was necessarily depressed. I did become a bit misbehaved when I was in primary school. I wasn't the best of well-behaved, but it wasn't something crazy. It would be like a bit rude to the teachers, answering back, maybe a fight here and there, but nothing like extreme. And when I went to secondary school, same kind of thing. There was nothing there. I wasn't the most studious of people back then. I have obviously since then gone through various levels of education, but I wasn't then necessarily very studious in my teenage years. But little arguments with the parents. But I mean, in
general normal stuff, to be honest.
Kind of normal. I mean, I don't think there's anything too extreme, to be honest. Even if I look back, obviously from a Muslim perspective now, anything you're rude to your parents is extreme.
Yeah, exactly.
I even remember recently when I was speaking to my father, and I said to him, it wasn't even, we were having a discussion that could lead to not an argument, but a disagreement that may leave my father feeling upset. So I said to him, look, Dad, me as a Muslim, I'm not even, I believe that I'm not even allowed to argue with you or to do something that makes you upset. So in an Islamic perspective, it's probably very bad. But from a normal UK perspective, it's just like a normal teenager being a bit hormonal or aggressive or whatever, you kind of answering back to the parents. Nothing extreme.
I think this is very important what you mentioned, because if we look at the dynamics of us as individuals, I come from a different turmoil kind of background. You came up from a normal middle class life. Some, as you mentioned earlier, some people say that, you find Islam when you're in troubles, you need to escape. But the reality is you came from a good kind of upbringing, you were kind of happy life, kind of, but you still found Islam, as you mentioned. So yeah, please continue. But I thought that was very important to highlight because the dynamics are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny enough, actually, I mean, back then, and it's kind of difficult, like, do I mention it, do I not mention it? Because I had to look at it now and say, if my father was watching this, will he be upset that I mentioned this?
Yeah.
But I think you can kind of understand as well, if all of a sudden your son says, I want to be a Muslim.
Yeah.
If you don't understand what Islam is, and if you have a bad impression of Islam, and sometimes we have Muslims in the UK from certain cultural backgrounds,
Exactly.
they don't have they may do things like, I don't know, they could be eating pan, spitting on the ground.
Exactly. Yeah.
They may come across as doing habits to others that may seem a bit unclean,
Yeah.
or they have their wife walking a mile down the road behind
Exactly,
them.
yeah.
So we don't always as Muslims give people the best
Impression.
image of Islam.
Yeah,
So they
exactly,
associate Islam to that particular community, and that particular community may be doing cultural things that aren't even permissible in Islam or have no basis in Islam, you know? So back then, I think, and the fact that I was also being, you know, like a bit of a, you know, rude and answering back. You know, my father, I think, was more of a trying to scare me. Said like, you know, got like a social worker to come round. So I had then this fear of, I'm going to go into care. And okay, at that time we were in a place called Red Hill.
Yeah, I know.
Surrey, right?
Yeah.
So I said to myself, if I go into care in somewhere like this, and I am at the moment a white English teenager Muslim, and generally speaking, I wasn't going into care because I was on drugs or I was going around stabbing people. You know, I wasn't some hard criminal. And I said, I'm going to go into a place with all these guys who are mostly going to be white, and they're going to look at me as some like, what, you know. Imagine me walking in as a white Muslim with all these other white guys who are probably in there for valid reasons, for doing lots of bad things, right? So I said to myself, this is going to be nice. So I ended up actually kind of running away from home and actually going and living in a mosque.
Wow.
In Brixton, London, which is complete contrast.
Contrast to your upbringing, huh?
So now you know how I'm so good at my Jamaican accents.
Yeah.
So
that's where all the Jamaicans and the Caribbeans were located.
So I spent subhanAllah, about 2 years there.
In the mosque, living in the mosque.
In the mosque.
How did you pull that off? Like, Yanni?
I mean, I reached out to the people. Like I said, you know, you say in hindsight, like I spoke to my dad and I said to him, Dad, you know, me doing that, Islamically was wrong. Me answering you back. But no one taught me back then. No one told me the importance of parents, as in like literally after Allah says in the Quran, we have commanded you to worship Allah alone and to be good to your parents, which shows you what? One, it's one of the highest acts of worship you can do. And on the flip side, it's one of the biggest sins you can do is to be bad to your parents. No one taught me that. So I'm still a hyperactive teenager, right? So, so in hindsight, that was wrong. But it's difficult to say now because that set processes in my life. That set me getting to know people who are upon the, you could say, the Sunnah, who tried to follow the Prophet's peace be upon him's way as best they could. So it kind of got me on the right path of Islam, I guess you could say. Plus, eventually, that would lead me one way or another of wanting to come to the UAE or wanting to move to a Muslim country. And then the rest of my life kind of, by the permission and blessings of Allah, kind of fit in after that, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I've said to my dad, ideally, you know, as a Muslim, you're not supposed to like run away. And, you know, I wasn't really in touch with my father during that time like I should have been. Maybe because I thought if I call him, they might track the call or something. And he told me later on they had a good idea where I was. But at that time I was 16. I'm not really like a 5-year-old or something. Where
exactly.
It's not as a priority necessarily for people to come and forcefully take me back. Long story short, so I was in that masjid for quite a while, a couple of years, which was an interesting contrast, but also was an interesting part of life, mixing with different people, seeing different. That itself was like a very diverse, because you had people from everywhere there. You even had some white people, some Algerian people, some you know, obviously British, but Jamaican, Haiti, everywhere you can think of. So that was an interesting journey. But eventually from there, I wanted to then, you know, move to a Muslim country. So I started looking at anywhere really, Egypt, Saudi.
And what sparked the desire to move to a Muslim country? Because, you know, it's like...
Of course, we know in Islam there is that principle of making hijrah, migrating for the sake of Allah to be better in your religion. Sometimes that could even be you're in a place
and you move to
another place within that country. So
you knew this concept very early on, because a lot of Muslims like find it out
because
later.
don't forget, I was living in the mosque, and you know, the mosque is known for practicing the Sunnah, bringing scholars over, having graduates from Islamic universities who are British teaching. So you learn a lot of these concepts. So I learned a lot of these kind of important religious concepts very young. So from not that I'm any particular high level of knowledge, but even from those young years, we were regularly in the mosque, listening to lectures, students of Sheikh Al-Albani coming over, different students from Medina, they'll be there and we'll be sitting there like, every day I'm in the mosque. So I'm just absorbing this information from a really young age.
Yes.
So from that young age, I already knew this kind of stuff like, this particular group of Muslims, they have these errors, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you had a
unique opportunity. You
got like a you could say like a firm grounding in many aspects. So these things came up. So that was in my mind as well. And I thought, especially you're a Muslim then, and you have this passion to know more about Islam. So you said to yourself, going to a Muslim country would be a great thing. And a long story short, eventually, when I think I was already then 16, I forget how it happened. I think I was contacted by somebody, I can't remember how and why, but somebody from that Muslim community in Red Hill said they wanted to meet at their house with my father. And it's very vague. Did I turn it down or did I go? But I can't remember how it happened, but me and my father met up. And
was that the first time you met him after all these years?
This was probably like a year and a half, 2 years, where I had, quote, unquote, run away from home, I guess you could say, or left the house.
Wow.
And I was I don't think I was in touch with him very often, but I was in touch with my mother to let them know everything's okay and I'm safe and everything like that. And
so deep.
And I think, I can't remember how, but we met up, me and my father, and we kind of, I guess you could say, made up to that extent. He realized by then that I'd made this decision, like, seriously. It's not like a phase because, and I told him by then, I said, look, I want to go to the UAE. Back then, UAE wasn't the big razzmatazz top 10 tourist place like it is now. It was a place really that was still quite developed, but it was a place where middle-aged people from the West who've got a lot of experience would come to help the country grow and get very big salaries and retire, and they retire after that. So it wasn't, but I just knew it was a place. I bumped into some people and they said, look, we're close to Saudi. And I thought, okay, I haven't had an opportunity, I haven't found a way to go to Saudi and live there. Let me try these guys. Let me try going to the UAE. So in the end, I told my father I want to go to the UAE, and he basically kind of, probably not very willingly, but deep down, but he didn't put a barrier. He said, him and my mother said, okay, we understand. I think they realized by then, look, I'd left home and I'd been away. So, they realized that I've probably made up my mind to go. But now, for many, many, many years, like ever since that time, everything's been fine with my father. I was always in touch. The more I learned about Islam, the more I realized, which is why I went to him a few years ago. I can't remember how it came up. And I said to him, when I was rude to you back then, and when I was being a feisty teenager, this is all forbidden in Islam, And I'm sure that he knows that because there'll be things that I may disagree with, but I'm sure he notices that I always stop. I'm a human. Hopefully I never will, but I never go to an argument. If there'll be a discussion that seems to be going that way about anything, could be disagreeing, it could be anything, right? Disagreeing on something. I think he must notice that I won't continue down that road and have a little backwards and forwards heated discussion on WhatsApp, for example. So I'm sure that's something he noticed. And obviously, as we know, that's from Islam.
I'm smiling because, I was just thinking to myself, the culture of the Caribbean men is like, it's quite, to establish your position, it can come across like an argument. When me and my father do talk, and, I was smiling as well because it's strange that, you mentioned that you run away, you didn't have a relationship with your family, but you're keeping your mother in touch as well. Same thing happened with me. I was away from home and X, Y, Z, and I didn't speak to my father, and many things happened, and I'm glad for the relationship we have today. But it's like, Islam comes to teach you how to be a better son, a better, parent even in yourself. And that's one of the things that helps to kind of reconnect all those ties together. But I was just laughing because as a Caribbean man, sometimes when me and my father talk, it's like, it can become across aggressive. I'm trying to assert my point and he's trying to assert his point. But it's not in a rude way, but it kind of reminds us that Islam is a way of life and even that shouldn't be done, And
but then obviously I think it's hard to compare. Like I understand where you come from, right? As Europeans, we have a different way of dealing with family life, right? And when you see people coming, I got my wife from Somalia and how they speak with each other, I'm like, why were you shouting? Like, were you mad? She was like, no,
it's normal.
I was talking about my day. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Really?
Exactly.
So it's like obviously cultural differences.
Yeah.
And I mean, as long as no one is getting hurt, that's like, it's no problem. Like, it's not like you need to be a quiet mouse every time. It's not like that, but treat people with respect.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So UAE, you're in UAE now. You've had this transition, this journey, and you're here today. Yani, what would you say that was that really important moment after deciding to come to UAE, which really shifted your life in the direction you're in right now?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I mean, I just basically came over here and things kind of, to be honest, I went back to the UK between 2000 and 2004 to do some studies because I found when I was here that as a 17-year-old with what would be the equivalent of GCSEs, it's very difficult. It's kind of understandable. What kind of job would you expect to get, right? Especially back then when even now to some extent, where the UAE is looking for people who have certain level of experience or certain level of qualifications, or ideally both. So I didn't have that, right? So after about 3 or 4 years of being here, I decided to go back to the UK for about 4 years. And that's when I did some higher studies in like graduate studies in media. And then I came back again. So in the beginning, it was kind of difficult because I came over and I was doing, as a 17-year-old, I guess you could say, what would be fairly low paid work because I was 17 So after about 3 or 4 years of doing that, I decided, look, let me go back to the UK and do some studies and then come back out again.
How old did you get married? Because you came 17 years old.
Yeah, I don't usually talk about that, to be honest.
No?
Secret stuff.
But I did get married, yeah. I did get married at a young age. And
how young would you say? You don't.
No, I was 17.
You were 17.
Yeah,
MashaAllah.
I mean, I won't go into details of how and where and who and that kind of thing. But
yeah, of course.
But I was 17 and my wife was 16.
Allahumma barik.
And
this is beautiful.
Again, sometimes some things happen, and this is just like the only explanation is it's from Allah.
Yeah.
That person. I was working in a Islamic. Well, back then where it was cassette tapes, so they called it bookshop and recording studio. They had that would sell books and cassettes of all the famous Islamic scholars like Sheikh bin Baz, Uthaymeen, Al-Albani. And back then, my brother-in-law would come regularly to buy tapes and books. We kind of sparked off a friendship, and one thing led to the other. And I got married to their sister.
Beautiful.
But again, so those things are all.
Because the reason why I asked that question, bro, so I'm sorry to interject there, is because when you come from a background like all of us in this room, we never had maybe marriage as a thing that was a concern, right? But you're a young man with,
Yeah, for sure. Like Muslims now, like you're 17, you know how easy it is to go and get different girlfriends.
Exactly, yeah.
You can go clubbing.
That's my whole point, yeah.
So, yeah, of course, the reason why someone should get married at 17, because we as Muslims, we want to do it in the right way.
Exactly my point.
We don't want to go and have girlfriends and every 6 months change and whatever, but, so the emphasis there is, you want to do it in the right way. Yeah. So the thing is, if you had like countless girlfriends, no one cares. As a 17-year-old, you want to get married? 17.
Whoa, say exactly. Whoa.
Of course, I can understand the perspective of how you're gonna support her, different things like that. Of course, that's normal things, but that people look at it as like frown upon, like enjoy your life, bro. But you get married at 17, that kind of mentality.
And that's a point that I wanted to touch on because there's a lot of things in the world right now, and a lot of even media and a lot of movies that portray like if you get married and have kids, your life's finished.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like they kind of, she, you know,
Life's over.
you know, life's over. She's playing a role as a mother and she's so mashed up and you know, X, Y, Z. But the reality is that's really where you start to enjoy life, right? Now you can focus. Now you can, you know, you have
responsibility.
You know, not only that, you have companionship.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that, you know, I always struggled with myself is that, you know, it's like, do I go to study? Because I got offered the opportunity to go to Medina and I didn't because I needed companionship. Maybe the wrong thing to do.
I got an offer to go to Medina. I actually went to an interview and they accepted me.
Wow,
and they said, all you got to do is forward your certificates. But at that time, was a time where I'd been married. My in-laws were looking up to me. They'd been very supportive in the beginning.
Yeah.
It was a very feasibility thing for them. They're looking at this new Muslim who made hijrah.
Yeah.
So now I'd gone back to the UK and I was 2 years through my studies. And I'm thinking like, you know, I need to get the studies and then I need to go, you know, they were very apprehensive of like taking their sister to the West in the first place. Just because they trusted me, alhamdulillah. So I wanted to get back as soon as I could.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was a difficult choice, but it was very difficult. But I decided I've got to finish what I'm doing. Alhamdulillah, I came back after that and I did here in the UAE a bachelor's in Islamic studies. And since then I've done a master's or whatever. But so I ended up coming back rather than going to Medina. So it's always stuck in my mind. That's why I said to myself, I have to at least come back, in my opinion, and do some structured Islamic studies. For me personally, it worked because I entered that bachelor's not thinking about the degree as such. But for me, it was a way
opportunity to
where I can get structured Islamic studies apart from the mosques. And if I end up getting a degree in the end, why not? And that's how I entered my master's as well. Let me do some further studies in like Islamic principles and da'wah and the fiqh of da'wah. And if I end up getting a certificate at the end, why not?
Why not? Yeah, exactly.
And I'm currently doing a second master's in Arabic, not with the intention of just the master's, but I want to improve my Arabic in a structured way. Yeah. And I've noticed looking here and there, trying to look for this mosque or this place or that place, I'm not going to commit. But when I pay that money and I have deadlines and assignments, I will commit.
Accountability.
But if at the end I get a second master's, why not? I don't need the master's, I already have one. But if it ends up with a second one and I can get advance my Arabic, why not?
Why not?
So that was that was what I did when I came back when it came to the Islamic studies.
Wow.
MashaAllah.
Oh, MashaAllah, good man. This is like, you know, a unique thing about having that trust and reliance in Allah.
Yeah.
We do the means. Allah Azza wa Jal pushes us, God the Almighty pushes us in directions maybe that we didn't hope for or see at the time, but we're pushed in that direction. One thing led to other, the wife, whatever it might be. And I think that, you know, that's a unique element of everybody's journey, whether they're watching, whether they're listening, whether it's us, there was a point, there always is a point which defines the next moments of your life. And it's about whether you're truthful in that moment or not, whether you take that moment or not, whether you take that gift or not. And I think that's what's one of the things that's really inspirable about everybody's story here is that, you know, we have those moments and we should take them. Yeah. And the rest will work out.
The truth reveals itself.
Yeah, exactly.
We go there.
They go there.
Yeah.
So how did it reveal itself for you? And what kind of, you said it's similar to my story, but.
No, because when you talked about it, I mean, we'd known each other, right? And I've heard your story.
I'm just going to pretend like I don't know for the sake of the podcast.
The particular story you told, I didn't know. But I've heard bits and pieces. And the more you talked about it, it's like very interesting, like, because I'm from Sweden, right? And sure, like you would think like I would come from a background like Ismail, right? Middle class and all these things, but it was very different where I came from. It was like, I didn't grow up poor, not like that. But it was more like lower middle class. There was some struggles here and there, right? And same here, like my parents divorced very early. Like I think I was 12, something like that, before my teen years. And I remember that I always talked about this with my sister, my younger sister. She's like 3 years younger. That for both of us, this divorce is like, we're talking about it from a point of view of before it and after it, how life changed.
Yeah.
So I think for some things, like in Ismail's case, it didn't happen. Like it didn't seem like it did a lot of impact. But I think Allah puts some things in your life for some people it just happens, and some people it changed their lives, right? So that's why I think like it's so inspiring to see. Surely we can have like similarities in experiences, but differences in how we perceive them, and how they change us, right?
Exactly that.
And that's also like, I think, when Allah puts signs in our lives to reflect and see what this guy happened to him as well, be thankful how it turned out for you, right?
Yeah.
And we grew up, like, Sweden is a very special country. Like, if you look at Europe in whole, it's a very secular country, and they've done studies on this. Like, if you talk about UK, like, there's still a lot of religious elements, right? There's a lot of, you got the monarchy, you got this, from my standpoint, I don't know what if you disagree or agree, but there's like,
it gives you the kind of image that there is some kind of Christianity or some kind of religiousness still there in some
some foundation.
There's some foundations. There's a lot of religious schools, like Islamic school. No, Islamic schools, Christian schools, Christian secondary schools. Yeah, it's still there.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like, there, you still have a lot of foundation, but when it comes to Sweden, all of that basically got erased, right? We became extremely secular, and atheism became a very, I would say a mainstream way of thinking, that even in the schools, we get taught that. Like, it's not like, this, by the way, there's something called atheist. No, this is the truth. This is what it is, right? It's weird if you go to church, like, you're the weird one, right? Like, we don't even talk about going to church on Sundays. I didn't know that was even a concept, right? So, and we always thought, like, there's always like a bunch of sayings in Sweden, like, keep the religion at home. When you go out, just leave it. Like, people shouldn't even see you're religious, right? Now, growing up in that environment, obviously, the worldly life is going to be everything there is, right? So very similar to you when you talked about, like, okay, I come now I'm white. I was living in an area with mostly, non-Swedish people, right? Immigrants and lower middle class. I feel like, bro, I need to, I got people here, they're in gangs selling drugs and getting money there. I got in other side of town Swedish people, like, from rich families. I'm not one of them. My parents are like divorced, man. I was living with my mom. My dad moved away. We're struggling, bro. Eating noodles for dinner. It's like, these ramen noodles, right?
Yeah, I know. The struggle's real, bro.
Part of my childhood, man. Still love them.
Pot noodles.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah. So I was thinking the same thing like you. I need to get out of here. And I think I was very, like doing creative stuff, like writing, drawing, and all these things. So I eventually, I came into, writing poetry as well, lyrics. Then I watched 8 Mile.
Oh, that's the game changer for everyone. Yeah. Well, everyone who wants to be a rapper, 8 Mile is like... Yeah,
we don't want to do anything like indirect promotion.
Okay, let's cut it out.
Some brothers go and watch 8 Mile now.
No one should watch it. By the way, it's disgusting. It's not.
Anyway, okay, let's put it like this.
Let's put it like that.
I saw movies that were promoting this lifestyle of, music, rap, hip hop, and I saw in this particular movie it was like a white guy, right, coming from a neighborhood with a bunch of non-white people. I was like, I could be that.
I can, yes. Right? Relatable, right?
It was relatable. That was the thing. There was no relatable things in my life. Like, coming from, I went outside. I was basically, I was always the odd one out. So I come from a family where almost everyone has hearing impairments. So my dad, he's deaf. My grandfather's deaf. My grandma is deaf. Like, we have this.
Wow.
So sign language was actually my first language.
Okay.
And we spoke it at home, sign language, right? And that was one thing that made me feel like I'm the odd one out. And then, especially growing up in an area where I was basically the only Swedish guy, it was me and another guy. I'm still friends with him. It was just me and him, like the white people. And then it was the rest, right? It's not like it was bad. I loved my friend. I'm still friends with them today. And it was, in fact, that led me to Islam. But back then, I didn't look at it at that way. I didn't feel it was like I couldn't go and speak like them. I would feel like a fake, and they would call me out, like, "Why are you speaking like us? You're a white guy. What are you doing?" So I'm feeling very like left out. And then with the divorce happening, also, you know, not having, unfortunately, the father figure I wanted. So seeing these, I think it was like just seeing these you know, musicians, rappers having this fame, money, like being independent and being like someone that people care about. I think that was like, okay, I want that, right? So I think that eventually grew into I started working professionally with that, you know, with producing and writing and all these things. And then I went into a music school, like college. They just opened that in my town. So it's like a very small town, like in middle of nowhere in Sweden, like not middle of nowhere, but like 10,000 people in that town. And then I went to that school, and I remember I had a lot of my Muslim friends that I still hanged out with. And during this time, it was like I was becoming very political. And I think also in that environment of Sweden, it was also very like things started to change a lot in the political spectrum. Like things were starting to get very harsh. So this was back in 2013, 2012, like starting, you know, economy wasn't well. It wasn't like all that, you know, housing crisis affected Sweden as well, you know. So I remember me and my other white friend, we always like talking about politics. And then the Muslim friends was like, yeah, but they always thought like, this is just garbage, man. We got Islam, right? And these people, like, mind you, like they weren't even practicing. Like you said, like they didn't have knowledge to make proper, you know, talk about Islam. They were just brought up Muslims that have Muslim names. That's it. They didn't eat pork. But still, they had some kind of, I would say, like
moral compass. Moral compass.
Yeah, that's some foundations.
Yeah,
basically.
foundation.
Yeah, they weren't shy talking about Islam. They knew Islam was true. They could just not transform that, right? They couldn't tell us. So, and what eventually happened was my friend, he, you know, his mother started dating a Muslim guy, and that relationship didn't go well, unfortunately. So this sparked kind of a hatred towards Islam. So because I was hanging out, I don't know where you.
I don't know why.
In which country is that? Like it's not.
No, I have alarms to remind me the press.
Before that,
Yeah.
mashallah. So they in that house I was hanging out there. He was my neighbor, right? So we started talking about Islam in a very negative way, like really talking about, you know, oh, look at them, they were so backwards and all that. So I was starting to create like this sense of, oh, all these problems in society we see today is because of the Muslims, because of these people. And I was even thinking like, yeah, my friends are Muslim, but look at them. They're like immigrants. They came from countries, war everywhere, right? Look at they're so backward, and they come here, they're starting gangs. So I was starting building up that, and my atheism just grew with that. I was like, religion is just for dumb people, you know, misguided people. And what happened was, out of nowhere, so during this time when I was in college, I was living by myself. So I was the loneliest I ever been. I felt really abandoned at that time. My mother, she met another guy, moved to another town with my sister. I had to like work 3 jobs, you know, evening, weekends, to just pay for my bills. And no one there to help me. Like I didn't have contact with my dad, nothing. I was left out. And still, it was the Muslims' fault, right?
Yeah, the blame game, right?
Because I think it was so much. I was a teenager, so much anger. I had to direct it somewhere, right? And then what happened was, 2015, right after I finished college, I got a call from my uncle, my mom's brother, and he said, "You know, your mom's in hospital." I was like, "What? What happened?" Like, no, we didn't know. Like she just, you know, fell on the floor. You know, his sister was home. So he still lived in the same town as me. And he said like, yeah, we're halfway there. Like it was like 5 hours drive. We're halfway there. Me and her mother, my grandma. So grab my car, get to the hospital. It's urgent. So I got there. I met the family there, my sister, my uncle. And then turned out she has, aneurysm, right? So she was laying in the bed. She was in a medical coma. She couldn't speak. I was thinking to myself, like, bro, all this time she was struggling. She was trying to help to provide for us. She was trying to be happy. You know, there was a lot of alcohol and everything in the picture. And now she was 41 back then, laying in the hospital bed, and like, this is it. Like that was her life. I was thinking, man, like, life is depressing. Like, why? What's the point? If it's gonna come to this, what's the point? And from the moment I got to the hospital, same day, the 1 week after, she passed away. They declared her like, her brain was too damaged and all that. They turned off the, what do you call it?
Life support machine.
Yeah, the life support system. And that was really like a very low moment for me, because I thought, even though I was felt abandoned, that, like, my mother, she was like the person who raised me. So many conflicting feelings of, why did you leave me and you took care of me? And now I couldn't even, talk with her about it. So I got home and I was like alone doing my thing. And that was like 2 years of after that. For 2 years time, I was like trying to make sense out of life, and starting, instead of hating and directing my anger and everything towards the Muslims or whatever, I started asking questions more like, okay, what's the point? Like, first I started there, like, what's the point? I was thinking, like, I don't even want to wake up. I hope, like, every time I went to bed, I was hoping that I wouldn't wake up, just so this, whatever this is, just ends, right? And then the question turned into, that mindset turned, instead of like giving up on life, let's find out what life has to offer. Let's be curious instead and see what happens. So I started asking questions like, what is the purpose of life? Why am I here? Is it really just to live life and just one day lay on the hospital bed and just, that's it? It can't be that. Like, it cannot be. So I think these existential questions started to pop up. And that is what really turned, because I was still an atheist, right? So atheism didn't provide me any answers to these questions. It just made me more depressed. Like, it's going to be black. It's going to,
dust.
Worm's going to eat your body. That's it.
You know what's is interesting is that everybody in life at one point has asked themselves this question: what is the purpose of my life?
I think when you ask these questions, this is the beauty of the human mind. If you just take it from an objective perspective, not religious, the human mind answers what it want to see. The answers it wants you to see, it's going to reveal it to you.
Yes.
But the things you don't want to see, you won't see it.
Placebo effect, right?
Yeah, I don't know what it's called. Like, it's like this experiment they had. Like, once you become a parent, you see baby strollers everywhere.
Yeah, it's like if you see you want to buy a certain car,
and you see them,
and you see the car everywhere. Placebo effect.
Yeah. And then it's like, I asked, what's the meaning of life? Then suddenly I see, I had some different works, right? So at one work, I was with a Swedish family that had disabled kids, really Christian people. And this is very rare in Sweden, really Christian people. So I started asking them, like, okay, tell me, what's the point of life? Why are we here? And they started talking about their faith, and I was like, okay, yeah, I cannot subscribe to the ideology. I see that this makes, like, it's spiritual. It's like, wow, you have this communities. I love that. They had really good community. And then I had in the studio I was working in, my colleague, he was also Muslim, very far away from it, like from the practicing part. But then there was one moment, and prior to that, I was actually sitting in my living. I remember when you talked about when you sat home and you was like, you were praying, right?
Yeah.
I sat home out of nowhere, and I was just thinking to myself, still an atheist, I was thinking, but let me just try and see what happens.
Yes.
Let's make a free trial. See what happens.
If you're there.
If you're there, let's see.
Let's see, yeah.
So I was lifting my hands up, and I said, whoever sees me, whoever hears me, because I didn't want to use the word God. This is like crazy people use. The Muslims.
No go.
No, but I seriously, I didn't want to associate myself with any religion. So I said, the one who sees me, the one who hears me, whatever is out there, is it an alien? I don't know. Whatever's there, guide me. Show me the truth. I'll accept it. And from that day, like it wasn't even a week later. I think it was a couple of days later. This guy in the studio, he was like out of nowhere, starting growing his beard. I was like, "Are you gonna shave? Like you forgot your razor? You like didn't stop work?" And then he started praying.
Wow.
You know, from you sitting there doing our thing. He's like, "Pause the music." Like, what? I'm gonna go pray. I was like, "What?" Go into the studio, the mic booth or something. What you call it? Like where you have the microphone.
Yeah.
And I just hear Allahu Akbar from speakers. Like, what's happening? Is it like the thing I saw on TV, like these extremists?
Yeah.
Because I thought really that Muslims, either you're like my friends, gangs, or you're the people on TV with the big beards. And, you know, this was the time, 2017, like things happening in Syria and, you know, all the extremist groups. And they showed it on media. So this is what I was I knew about Islam. So I couldn't I knew he was my friend. I thought like, he's not going to be in a gang. It's not going to be like, what is he doing? So when it came out, I asked him and he told me like all these, it was like this, the same 6-hour session you had. We had that.
Yeah.
So I asked all these questions. One question I asked, and this stuck to me until this day, I asked him, because every time I asked Christian people about it, I didn't get this satisfying answer. Who is God? Who is God? If someone created us, who is that? Define it for me. And you know, when I came to different people, different religions, it was always different answers. But he gave me such a, you know, specific answer. He said, you know what? There's actually a chapter in the Quran talking about it. The one of the last chapters.
Surah Ikhlas.
Yeah. So he said, in Swedish, he translated the first verse, say God is one. He is as-samad, the one who everyone relies upon and doesn't rely on anybody, right? In, you know, rough terms. He did not begot and was not begotten, and nothing is unto like him. I was like, wait, that makes sense. Like, it's not a man, it's not a woman, it's not, you know, an alien, or we can't even imagine. And we all need that. That creator, that entity, we need it. We depend upon it. Made so much sense. And from that moment, I had no doubt that Islam was false. I mean, true. I could not even, I didn't accept it, obviously. I felt like, no, I'm not an Arab. I'm a Swedish guy. I'm a Viking. I have blue eyes. I'm not going to be this. Muslims. But in my heart, I knew it was true.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's funny you say that now, because I'm only relating to the white thing, because that's a misconception as well, that people think that Islam is an Arab thing or for certain races, where we know, first of all, that the most populous Muslim country is Indonesia, where Islam spread, no war, nothing, no sword, through the honest trading of Muslim. But if we look in Europe now, we have Kosovo, which most people recognize as an independent country, where 99% of them are pure white Muslims. You go to Bosnia, the current population is about 60% Muslim, pure white Europeans. You go to Montenegro, you have 20% of Montenegro, pure white Muslims. You know, and
even Turkey.
Even Turkey, if you look at Turkey from the European side, they're also Europeans, Muslims. You go to Greece, there are still people who embraced Islam way back, who are still there in small communities, pure white Muslims. Bulgaria, there are still very small people. Poland, you go towards the Polish-Belarus border, you have the Tatar people. You look at them, they look like any other white Polish person, but they are Muslims. So this is another misconception, that they think when you become a Muslim now, I'm no longer European, where in fact, you know, like I said, 99% population Muslim, white Europeans, and then you have over there 60% now of Bosnians. At one stage it would have been probably a lot more, because you have a lot of other surrounding Slavs moved into Bosnia from Croatia and Serbia, but white Muslims. So you know, Islam is not something that is. And if you want to go down that road, if someone says, "Oh, I could never be a Muslim. I'm from this religion." Jesus himself was not a white guy from UK or Germany, right? Blue-eyed, like they always portray him to be a blue-eyed white man with blonde hair, as if he's from Sweden or something, or Viking. No, he was from the Middle East. So if you're going to use that compass, I believe Islam is true, but I can't become a Muslim. It's a foreign thing. Then you cannot be a Christian either, because it's a foreign thing.
Exactly. This is a very big misconception, actually. You know, and even like we've all suffered from it in some way. It's like, you know, that if I become a Muslim, that means I have to become Arab.
The thing is, we don't want to go too much into this because we know that our next episode is going to be talking about the challenges after becoming a Muslim. And I want to become a Muslim, but that big but.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're going to mention those kind of things that come in.
Yeah.
There were a lot of buts.
Yeah, there's a lot of buts. Yeah. But this is good to remove that little misconception there and to kind of break the ice in that regard. But it was something that was very interesting. I think we shared this before when we gave our presentation in one of the mosques here. Surah Ikhlas, that last the chapter in the Quran, not the last one, but in
one of the last page. Yeah,
we both shared that in our story. Yeah, that was exactly the surah that he wrote down for me to read that day.
Yeah, so crazy.
It's so crazy. It was like, you know, that was a kind of, I remembered the word Allah. And I remember calling out to Allah 3 times for some form of relief, and that was kind of really interesting. And what's really interesting, which will kind of lead us on to our next episode as well, but not now, but just to touch on it, is that you're from Surrey, you're from Sweden, you're both white, I'm black, from a different area. Every one of our stories shares a unique, you know, something unique that is shared. Does that make sense? It's unique to you, like Surah Ikhlas is unique, but I share it. Your background, I share it. Your friend that was Muslim but not practicing, also I share it. And you see how unique all these things are. It's like all these things come together in different people in the world. Shows that the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How after all of that, He brings us together. And we can share it with the world, and we talk about our experiences. Like, I didn't know you from, you know, Adam, and so on and so forth. It's very unique, very special. So one of those unique things about, you know, Allah's qadr meaning His predestination, what He's decreed, is that He's decreed 3 people to be sitting in a room together in a studio from different parts of the world that share the same story and share elements of the same story, which is the journey into Islam, which is some of the background, some of the history. And I think most of the people watching or who would be watching can kind of relate to that. And they may have some questions. The questions is like, you know, a question can come to mind is, what is Islam? What is this thing that you all accepted from your different backgrounds? What were you accepting? You know, who wants to answer that? What was you accepting, bro? If you're not accepting to become an Arab, what is it that you embraced and accepted?
A complete way of life.
A purpose, a direction,
the way of life.
The way of life.
It's not just, obviously, we as Muslims, we don't believe this is just a choice. We believe it is the only, you know, the only proper, true, correct choice you can make.
I think if I was going to say for myself, what I accepted is the acceptance of God the Almighty in His essence, and giving Him His due right. I think that's what I accepted. Because, you know, when I was explained to me, it's like, you know, God is one, as you mentioned, you know, in your journey, and He's deserving of our worship. You know, He's the one who brought us into existence. And as we know from the Holy Quran, it mentions the translation of, I did not create mankind and jinn except to worship me. Right. So what I was accepting from my perspective is to devote myself to Almighty God in the way He's chosen for us. And I think that's what really stands out for me in my journey, is because I believed in God, but I didn't know the route towards Him, if that makes any sense. You're told different routes, and there are different routes available to you, but there's only one that leads to Him, really, to be honest, you know. And that's what I was accepting, that one true route to Almighty God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is to worship Him in His oneness. Now I want to, at this point, just kind of clarify to the listeners what is meant in Islam by worship is a comprehensive statement for everything that Allah, God the Almighty, loves and is pleased with from a person's statements and actions, both inward and outward. So we know by this definition, if I smile, if I have intimate relationship with my wife, if I carry my mother shopping, whatever it might be, these can all be acts of worship. Sleeping, as you mentioned, is a complete way of life. And I think that's what, if anyone's listening, that's what we all accepted and embraced, that we're going to change our life in accordance with the true message that God has sent to us. And I think that's the defining moment of anybody's life. If it comes to the message that comes to you, if it comes to the information you perceive, there's only one truth. The sky is blue, and water is water, and the sun is the sun. There's only one truth. You can't have multiple truths.
And I want to add on that, like truth. At the end of the day, truth should be objective. 1 + 1 is 2. Sky is blue. But we all have subjective like journeys towards this truth. And I just want to emphasize this, like anyone can go on this journey as long as you have the intention and you want to be guided. God will show you the way, right? Additionally to that, like I was trying to avoid this truth for like this whole 2 years. I was trying to prove that Islam, this way of life, was wrong because I did not want to accept it, and trying to find another way of life, right? Trying to prove it until the same friend that told me about Islam said to me once, Simon, you're trying really hard to prove something that is false and try to disprove that something that's right. So why don't you just accept it? And this is what I really want to truly, whoever's listening, whoever's watching, to realize that if the truth is revealed to you in front of you, right, is there. Like you don't have accept it. Right? It's going to be there, whether you want it or not, right? Then you have the choice if you want to turn away and live that whatever life you're living and, in my opinion, be miserable, or find the true purpose, right? We all have our subjective journeys, but the truth's going to be there.
Yeah. I think something just came to my mind when you're saying this is that, we're going to mention this in the next episode, but just to kind of conclude on, is that okay, the truth is there. It's in front of your face. It's there. You've seen it. You've experienced it. You've tasted it. What's going to stop you on that journey or stop you accepting it normally comes down to exterior motives.
Yeah.
What if and the what ifs and the whys and the buts. But the reality is, if you know something to be the truth, every external matter is irrelevant. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Because all the what ifs and the whys and the buts are the unknown, but the known is in front of you. So I kind of want to say this is the journeys that we've all been on. We've seen it, we've seen the truth, and we've taken that journey into the unknown. And I guess the next question will be for everyone, is your life got better or worse? And I'll leave on a cliffhanger, huh? No, but the reality is, once you take this journey and you embark on this journey, you realize that life actually becomes worth living. And it becomes so satisfying, whether you're going through calamities or hardships. And I'm often asked, would you go back to that lifestyle you had with all the stuff you had? And I say, I wouldn't exchange 5 minutes of the life now I have for everything I ever had back before Islam, because it's a completely different dynamic. I don't know if you share the same thing or have had the same questions posed to you.
Definitely. I cannot see any other happier life than being a Muslim in reality.
No, I tried to disprove it. It didn't work.
It didn't work out for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's there.
It's there,
and it's complete.
So let's bring this episode to its end, its closure. I think the next episode we'll discuss I want to become Muslim, or the challenges that we faced. And for now, I'll leave the viewers with this note. Everyone from every walk of life has a journey and a life they've experienced. But the reality is we're all heading to the same direction, whether we embrace it or not. And that same direction is we are born and we die. The question is, what are we going to do with the life that we've been given today? Are we going to utilize it in the right way, or are we going to waste it in that which is wrong? And I'll leave you with that thought. Till next time, fi imanillahi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.